Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a new segment time for this is the first time we're having this all new episode of Pabs and Pops. My name is Suryansh Basumalik, nicknamed Pupa, or we're calling it Pops for the sake of the title. We have Porush Bondopadhyay joining me. He's going to be doing this with me for the entirety of the segment. His nickname is Pablo, and again, for the title of the rhyming name, we're calling it Pabs and Pops. So yeah, Pablo's a lawyer. He is one of the few very interesting people I've met who has some very interesting insights on quite a few things that some of which we'll be getting into today. Now, before we get into the main content that Pablo and I thought about, I wanted to throw Pablo a bit of a curveball today. So I was scrolling through my Instagram and I noticed a friend of mine posting a video of his dog dry humping a pillow on his bed, right? Now, captioned, at least someone's making use of it. Um, now, at first I thought, isn't that pornographic content? But then you're a lawyer, so is that technically incorrect? Can you do such a thing? Can you post it on social media? Does it count as pornography?
So when you look at pornography, ideally you have to look at something that is so illicit, so incorrect, but yet people are giving consent to, or not consent to in sometimes, being posted that can hurt someone's sentiments, right?
Right.
And honestly, it's a lot of gray area. Then because a couple making out in a park, and they posting a picture of them kissing can in a way be illicit, or not illicit, can be categorized as pornography. But is the actual content of it pornography? You have to also take into account when it's your grandparents 70th anniversary or 50th anniversary, and they give each other a kiss on the cheek and you post that picture. There are people saying, oh, is that also pornography? The entire question behind it is the perverse nature that we derive from it, and then and only then it can be categorized as pornography. But then again, a very good case against can be made,
Right. So,
right?
if you were to see, come across such a video, right? Would you term it as pornographic content, or
No,
would you just laugh it off?
I'd generally laugh it off because, like when the world went into lockdown in the month of March,
Right.
there were two lizards making out on the top of my wall, and I had posted the same video on Instagram and said somebody at least is getting some action.
Uh,
Right. So honestly, I'm on the same boat of the guy.
I'll be sure to send that one to you. Okay. Now coming back to what we were originally supposed to talk about. So the first or the second time I met Pablo, we came across this very interesting topic, which was of a bulletproof black woman. Now we're not talking about a literal one. Now I won't take the credit for this one here, so I'll let Pablo explain the origination of that concept because he brought it up to me. So uh, why don't you bring out what you thought about that entire topic the way you introduced it to me?
So the first time that I had actually heard of this motion was from a friend who had in turn heard it from a debate that he had gone to, or debate in Jadavpur University, the freshers debate or sort that they call it. And then we got to talking about how the society is ready for a bulletproof black man. And then while developing on the concept of why the society is at all should be ready, or why should the person that the society ready for be a bulletproof individual, and especially why black. So ideally when he and I were discussing this, we broke this down into a few segments. One is why the society should be ready is actually a part we'll only understand after the latter part. So we'll set that aside for the time being. We'll talk about what he and I was talking about, how a bulletproof black man or a bulletproof individual can be the ripple of change, right? So one droplet ideally causes a ripple effect. And if this individual is given unlimited power, resources and has a strata of people that believe that yes, you are correct. And even if they don't, are compelled to believe that yes, he or she is correct, how much of a change can that person bring? So, this entire concept is an argument between a democracy and a dictatorship. Uh, Mostly dwelling into something, a utopian concept, because honestly no society will ever be ready or accepting towards a bulletproof black woman or a man for that matter. So the entire concept was based on how one individual given everything can change anything and everything at one go. So there was a Hindi movie that I had seen a few years back. I don't remember the name of the movie. It was about how this guy became prime minister for one day. So what he did was he took all power into his hands. He by himself started the journey towards change. So ideally, change cannot be brought overnight, right? So the entire concept is around what is better for society. But then again, society is divided into multiple stratas, right? The upper strata, the middle strata, the struggling strata, and the lower strata. Is a change so holistic that it can affect all three stratas or all four stratas in the same way? No, it cannot. If today we bring upon any kind of measure wherein we say that so and so must be implemented equally towards everyone, the total amount of effect that it will take towards individual A whose per annum salary is say 1 lakh, and individual B whose per annum salary is say 100 lakhs will be completely different. Like, for example, if I dwell from the strata that has a 1 lakh per annum salary or income, and you tell me 100 rupee taxation must be paid, and I'll be thinking, okay, 1%, not a problem, or lesser than 1%, not a problem. But then again, same thing you divide by someone who has 10,000. He'll be thinking, okay, so if 100 rupees is gone, I have 9,900 rupees left. I have a large chunk of my income is gone. So a change needs to be brought in such a way that it is equitable and not equal, right? So there's a basic concept in law which is equality and equity. Equality is a concept that, for example, there are very famous pictures that we've seen. There are three individuals, one very short, one medium height, and one very tall, trying to look over a wall. You give all three of them the same height of ladder, same a ladder of the same height. It's not going to help them. The short person still might not be able to look over, whereas the tall person will have a very nice view. But you give the short guy a ladder tall enough to reach over the wall, and you give the tall guy a smaller ladder. That is what the entire concept is based about how an individual so radical can take everything into her or his own hands. So when we were talking about her and his, this concept of her and his, black man or black lady, why black? So in our society, everyone is categorized by their first appearance, right? I mean, your first impression, unfortunately, is still your last impression, how much ever you try to change it. Or if you're going to a friend's party and you're drinking with him and you throw up, right? You're always going to be remembered as the guy who threw up. In contrast, that same friend was dying that same night. You stopped him or you caught him by the collar from jumping off the 10th floor. They're not going to remember you by that. What they're going to remember you as, oh, Pops is the guy that walked in and threw up. Right. Unfortunately, your it's that first scratch that you make is really important, right? So dark skinned individuals or black individuals, however society has evolved to accept them, deep down we know that when you're sitting in the last bench of your classroom, there's this guy, one guy who's dark skinned, and you will be hesitant to sit beside him. That is the entire battle that you're fighting against, right? Why should we be hesitant to sit beside someone who just has more pigment in their skin,
Hmm.
who just is uh, less likely to get skin cancer? I mean, if at all, he's luckier. People of black skin, people of different religion, people of different caste have no difference from the other person that is judging them. My surname cannot differentiate me. Where I was born cannot differentiate me. The X and Y chromosomes that I have inside me should not differentiate me, unless and until for the physical differences that set aside. But how, what my skin color is should not be a parameter for you to take me a different way, right?
Right.
So since this concept came in wherein black people will always looked at in an incorrect way or demeaned upon or looked at in a demeaning manner, my friend and I thought that how about this bulletproof man made black? Because ideally, if it's a black person versus a white person, and the black person is assumed to have gone through more shit, he'll know what to do better, right?
Hmm.
So, and what does this? So that basically gives about what black, right? Now, women are a double negative. Why I say black women and why I was telling you that let's call this segment a double negative is because we're talking about bad and worse, right? Black, step one, where he's demeaned or she is demeaned. Step two, women, the second gender, the lower gender, is just very sad when we think about a society wherein men have differentiated between women from years and unfortunately might in tomorrow too. I mean, look at it. Why should there be a difference in uh, a quota or in buses where there should be different seats for women? Isn't that also degrading? Yes, you give them privileges. Yes, but why do they require the privileges? Because we've oppressed them from time immemorial. And it's really sad. I mean, yesterday, my mom and my aunt and I were having a conversation wherein when they used to go to school, they used to carry these needles or pins with them, right? So they used to travel in buses, so it was a standing instruction from their parents that if a guy tries to come too close to you, you poke them with a needle. And I was thinking, how archaic is this? Nobody will even try to do this. But then they were telling me that they almost had to make use of that needle on a daily basis. And their parents would buy them more needles. So given that we belong to society wherein women are looked upon in such a weird manner and for no reason. I mean, if there were no women, we would not be born and nothing, society would not have gone ahead.
Right.
So that's why I say a double negative here is required. So now since I mean after me telling you why this double negative was at all required, let me tell you why the society is ready. As of right now, Jack Ma is missing, right?
Yeah.
Xi Jinping has been accused to have taken him off the face of this world, right? How can a news line of this be afloat against a government and society be okay with that? If it is true, it's just calling or shouting that society is ready for a bulletproof black man or a bulletproof black woman. And if it is not true, society is still ready for a black woman because the press have gone way too far, right? It's more fake news than real news. So,
Right.
and you can go into 101 angles with this entire concept because it's a never ending line or a never ending thought process. And it is just so pervasive in our life. It's so invasive that we are dealing with it on a daily basis.
Right. See, it makes perfect sense to me because I want to start by addressing the same topic from where you kicked it off as well, from the first part of the double negative, which was the black person. Right? I mean, this also technically applies for the woman part of it, but I mean, of course, society today, like a giant section of society, is biased or discriminative against a black person or a white or a woman or multiple different minorities, right? That have discrimination in different ways. Now, where did all of this originate? Like, where did this root out of, right? It came from old principles and religious beliefs from different teachings that at some point a woman can be treated as a witch, and at some point a black man is inferior in this society because of his color. Someone somehow put out the point that black is or dark colors are an inferior color to bright ones. So those principles carried forward from those centuries up till this one, wherein the concepts are still prevalent. However, because there was more forward thinking, we're still believing that no, this doesn't make sense. And as mindsets came by, we were like, oh no. Then when it came to women, women eventually got rights to vote. Then it kept, because of the evolution of different ideas and principles, these people started getting more of the light that these people actually are human beings, and they receive the same rights as we. And we in this context is the privileged upper class white or male or what have you. So with that being said, I believe that when it comes to modern day beliefs, these principles still exist. However, because of those forward thinking approaches which can't be taught at the grassroots level, we're still facing a point where because the knowledge of how these people are, as a woman is equal to a man, or a black man is equal to a white man, or so on and so forth, isn't that knowledge of it isn't exposed as well as it should be, in order to completely uh, you know
Eradicate the problem.
eradicate that older mindset. Like you saw we see like the example for dictatorships, right? Dictatorships were, as many as there could have been, were disbanded. We're seeing more democratic countries. We're seeing more scenarios where there's the
No, let me interrupt you there once. So,
yeah,
why do you think dictatorships were disbanded or removed with?
because they didn't represent the voice of the people, all the
Okay.
people.
So, you're telling me that corrupt dictatorship should be removed, right?
Yeah.
So that again comes back to our entire point that we are talking about an individual who is bulletproof and who belongs to the so-called lower strata of society.
Hmm.
So, do you feel that a good dictator will do well? For example, if a dictator were to base his laws on public opinion and moral standpoints and liberal thoughts, would you feel that dictator would do well?
Well, yes and no, because uh, if, let's say, I am a dictator and I see society as this, and this, and this is how I believe it should run, I would think I am a good dictator if I am able to get these principles across and I am able to make the world the way I think it should be. However, if I have methodology A, ideology A, and another said person has ideology or methodology B on how the execution or the principles that uh, governed area should follow, that said person would think, I didn't do it right, or there are some changes I could make. So when we're talking about a good dictator, we need to establish a good dictator from whose perspective, fair from what perspective, because the the different schools of thought, because there are different schools of thought coming in, that fair is a scenario where this person gets this, because a 50-50 balance, in my opinion, doesn't always cut the cut the cake in a way in
The
which
best way.
yeah, because I can be let's say I am a very skinny person, and you are with a very small appetite, and you are a very big person with a very big appetite. Okay, we both get half and half of a cake, wherein I can't finish my half and you can finish your half and want some more. So therein a 50-50 cut will not really satisfy the society in this case, you and me. So you'd have to figure out whether it's a 20-80 or a 60-40 and so on and so forth. So there's many different parallels you'll have to draw out before even considering the concept of a dictatorship, right?
Yes, I agree.
Right. So that brings us to the next point, which is the bulletproof point, right? When we're talking about bulletproof, we're thinking of something along the lines of, say, uh, immune to hatred, or immune to, or is, can go forward at the same tempo, irrespective of what's said against them. Now, here's where I'm a bit confused with my mind, right? On Because I think that the main drive that this black person would have is because of the discrimination driven against him, right? Or you'd have a scenario wherein the person's school of thought would be hindered by the opinions that are guided against him, and his way to reform the society would be guided on the basis of what's said about his society, right? So what do you make of, uh, do you think that the person should be aware of, uh, that these problems exist and they must be tackled, and these are something that happening to his society? Or how do you think that should all be charted out? Because it seems a bit disbalanced that on one level the person is bulletproof to hatred, but another aspect can be considered that the hatred is what's driving him
Driving
to
him.
strive. Yeah.
So my idea behind this is, though in a utop, this my entire concept is based on that the world can be molded into any shape and figure, and since it can be molded into any shape and figure, this concept can exist, right? So when we talk about bulletproof, we mean that he will not be scathed by anything. She will not be scathed by anything. For example, if that she is molded by oppression and how people have looked down upon her for years on end, she can't use that to fuel her hatred and can't use that to make laws, right? Example being, if people have called me fat from when I was very young, I can't ban the word fat, right? So, what the entire concept of bulletproof should run in corollary with is the entire concept of equity, right? So,
Right.
and equity and natural justice. So, do you have an idea of what natural justice is?
Vague.
So, the concept of natural justice can be an example wherein we did too much to the world, and the world is fighting back with the entire storms and stuff like that. Is That's just a very vague concept of it, but it is more deep stand into a concept wherein natural justice is something that is supposed to be just to every individual. Example being, if today you and I go for a walk, and in that process of the walk, you decide to run, and then you trip over and fall on someone and break his neck. Will you be charged for murder? In
I
the essence, maybe,
Yeah.
but will you be guilty of murder? No, you'll be guilty of homicide. But then again, because of your entire act being completely an accident and you having no criminal record whatsoever, and you doing, assume that you were running to save a dog from crossing the road and getting hit by cars, right? So the act that you started on, the intent behind your act was not to kill the individual, correct?
Right.
So natural justice stems from the point that an individual should not have any intent to do wrong. His action should not be of wrong, and the cause, if wrong, should be just a happening or an event that he could have in no way predicted, right? So if a situation like that arises and it hurts someone else, so be it. But that does not mean you shall not be penalized, correct? So now bringing this back to the concept of being bulletproof, if a person is bulletproof, he or she, if that person can do anything, right? And things that she may do can come and bite her back in the ass.
Hmm. Yeah.
Correct? So, do you feel that there should be a council that demands what she or she cannot do? And if so, who decides the council? And if before going to the concept of who decides the council, should the council be made of every single individual that she's going to affect?
Well, I see it on two different levels, right? Because this council, right, if it will compose of the people it will represent, it will become a very impractical situation wherein, you know,
Chaos.
yeah, chaos. So many different people. I mean, the Indian Parliament is the best example of such a situation. So you have like multiple people of multiple parties and multiple members of the same party in one council and in one parliament, and everyone's discussing, bringing in their own views, and then they pass legislation and so on and so forth. But with respect to this council, I would say that there be a representative of like, let's go back to um, olden age France, right? In France, you had the Estates General, right? That composed of the three estates, the 98% that held the 98%, the 1.5%, and the 0.5%, who each had one representative who could cast one vote on one piece of legislation on behalf of that sect of society. Now, while it isn't uh, equal to, again, the same 50-50 example, right? While this isn't equal, you can take an example wherein you have this said bulletproof person is having an impact on uh, group X, group Y, group Z, group A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. You bring someone from this group in, you make them you help this person understand multiple schools of thought, and they realize that ki look, y'all see, we see it this way, they see it that way, and those guys also see this and this and this and this way. These are the pros and cons that you should weigh into when you see this. Now, when you're going to pass a legislation or a piece of paperwork that has something to do, something that impacts them, and if it impacts section A positively and section B negatively, you must figure out a way that that same legislation or subsequent legislation must help, um let's say,
So equity instead of equality.
yeah. So if I face a problem here with a law that you're passing and that person is gaining from it, I must have some kind of reassurance that you're going to do something at some point to make sure that even though I have been pushed down a little bit because of this situation, you're going to help me get back up in some way or another. Now, what that is up to this head.
Bulletproof council and
Yeah.
this. So my idea behind this entire concept is that if an individual is bulletproof and the individual has the power to do anything, no such legislation, law, or rule or order that she should pass should affect anyone diversely, right? So my entire concept of this is whether society can accept to sacrifice a little bit to gain a little bit more. So in economics, there's something called the next best alternative,
Okay. Yeah.
right? So when we look at the next best alternative, we are giving up something. We are giving up satisfaction A, but in the entire long run, satisfaction B is the agenda, which is or more likely will trump satisfaction A in the long run. But the short run problems are far fetched and many. If you give an individual all powers, that person will definitely cause harm to a lot of people. For example, if the person was to pass a law wherein internet use is to be rationed within 6 hours or 5 hours, people that have avid use of internet like you and I would have a problem, right?
Yeah.
But then we'd also see that machine usage is reducing, electricity usage is reducing, the amount of uh, power y- requirement is lesser. So long term effects, like, right, for example, if all our cars are shut down for 5 days, that would ideally increase our the petrol reserves or the oil reserves that the entire world has by a month,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? I mean, if there is no use and no purchase and no supply of oil for 5 days, it is estimated that one and but there is production of said oil. It is
Yeah.
said that one entire month's of reserves can be a deficit of can be created by if a deficit of 5 days of use is produced, right?
Right.
But that 5 days of deficit when we are creating will cause hundreds of thousands of people the entire their income opportunities, their livelihood, and so forth. A lot of things. Daily wage earners will not be able to eat for 5 days.
Mm.
Food will not be put on many individuals' plates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this entire concept of a bulletproof black woman has is a gray area wherein she will have to work for the betterment of everyone or for the worse of everyone and betterment of or either it has to be the for the good of everyone or it has to be a, a problem created for everyone which is for the good in the later life. For example, this entire lockdown, right, because
Yeah.
of COVID, it was a hindrance to all trade activity, individuals everywhere throughout the world.
Yeah.
Your brother was stuck in
Netherlands.
Amsterdam
Yeah.
for a long time, right? And you couldn't see him. Not that you want to, but you couldn't.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but in the long run, the travel did not cause him COVID. Think about it that way. It was a hindrance, but it didn't kill him,
Yeah.
right? And that's a very small scale example. You look at daily wage earners that for a month on end could not earn, but for the next 10 years can be alive to earn,
Right.
correct? So the entire concept of a worldwide lockdown was a step that a bulletproof black woman could have taken.
Right. Hmm.
I mean, could be one of the, it was a very radical measure.
Mm-hmm.
There
Yeah.
was no consensus taken, there was
Yeah.
no voting on that point.
Hmm.
It was an emergency decision to deal with societal problems. But are you telling me that COVID is the biggest problem in society that we have right now?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest problem in society. I think it's something that does affect it, but I don't think it's the biggest
Correct.
problem to it.
If you were to equate having COVID for a year and removing domestic violence from the face of this earth, which one would you choose?
Removing domestic violence from the face of this earth.
Exactly. There are still more cases of domestic violence in different states of India than COVID. Child abuse, domestic violence, rape,
Because I
human
see,
infanticide.
and I think here's why, right? Something like COVID is one giant fire in the world, right? Hypothetical fire in the world that needs to be put out, right? However, cases of domestic violence or what any other prevalent issue, what have you, um, are little fires. I mean, I'm not saying it's a small problem. I'm saying the impact that
It's
we,
not that in your
yeah,
face.
that COVID is all over our face. Like I have a mask right beside me, to my left, to my right, and in front of my door because of COVID. The media is covering a shit ton of COVID. However, on the daily news before COVID hit, if you were going through your articles, how many articles did you see about Kanye West and his new political ideologies, him running for president, rather than cases of this person being assaulted. The news is for the people to understand what's going on in the world, and rather you're seeing a scenario wherein they're seeing they're seeing things that aren't as societally important, right? In the sense, of course, yes, I feel that entertainment and culture is important and it shapes the way we see things, right? However, it's a case wherein you're thinking of, how do I put this, um domestic violence. There are hundreds and thousands of different cases, right? And when you're reading about cases of domestic violence, you think that, oh no, it's like hearing about it so much, the impressions that these media agencies are getting are concurrent, that now, because we're writing about it so much, people aren't going to read it anymore. But when we put up suddenly put up this huge story about a different topic and this and that with a clickbaity headline, people will click on it more and we'll make more out of it. So in the similar concept, when we're talking about COVID, or when we're talking about anything unusual, right? If you're not the first to a concept, you try to be different, right? Do it in a different manner, right? Elon Musk wasn't the first to the car industry. He wasn't the first to the electric car industry. But the way he promoted the electric car is what revolutionized or is revolutionizing the electric car industry, right? Or the car industry, right? Similarly, COVID was a giant talk about topic in February of 2020. But now you can't talk about the origination of COVID and expect the same amount of views on it because it's an older story. But the bringing in of a new vaccine is a new topic that you can attack from another perspective. Now, why I think people won't resort to clicking on more stories about domestic violence is that you won't see it in a way wherein you mostly see stories about this person did it to this person in this nation, in this city, and so on and so forth. But you won't see a story that says this person. You won't really see a different strategy of promoting domestic violence. It is this. It doesn't go. You don't get any way around it. You can't promote it in the same way as you're promoting something like COVID or the electric car example, so on and so forth. Which is why I think something like domestic violence is not going to be given at all the same amount of attention as something like COVID, because government, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's a government, if you see um, one person in front of you who you can save and a million different people who you'll have to go to a much larger extent to save, slowly, step by step, that could tire you out, you'd go for that one person which is a more assured save. Which is why I think, dealing with something like COVID, which you can reach out to much quicker than something like domestic violence, would be cared about more. I mean, I think in a utopian world, the world would resort to in a utopian world where this did exist and these were to be fixed. Uh, I feel that domestic violence would be fixed first, and then in second you'd get COVID, or of course you would do both at the same time, and yay. But then again,
So my entire concept of a bulletproof black woman
yeah,
is an individual that can do both at the same time. Yay.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the boom point. But then again, let's look at the more real world aspect of the same, right? When this bulletproof black man would come in, he'd see that, you know there are this many hundreds of thousands or these many millions or hundreds of millions of domestic violence cases taking place, uh, and these many COVID cases coming up, and they're rising at an exponential rate. What would you resort to first? Because you don't have an unlimited set of resources, right? You can't just throw money at both of them at the same time and expect them to be fixed, because you know it requires a lot of different types of strategizing, which I don't think one person will be able to go through with it. Because fine, I see what you're talking about. The bulletproof black man won't be scathed by what people are talking, what people are saying about it. Like the example you said about, oh, I was called fat, but that doesn't mean I'll ban the word fat. But then again, I know that fat was something incorrect to be used in that context for any person, and you shouldn't be going about it like that. But do you think that, how do I put this? This person would be knowledgeable enough to tackle something like an armed, let's say this bulletproof black person is of a country. Let's take the United States. Okay, this person controlling the United States is aware that, but that this social issue or this healthcare issue is of interest, and this is what I can help with. Would that same person be as educated on how to strategize its country's army to go to war and how they would take care of it? Which is why you'd have which is why you'd have advisors, which is why you'd have this different person and that different person. So put in
Correct.
one.
But I feel that given a situation of war, the decisions made by the bulletproof black woman would not give rise to the war in the first place.
Hmm.
I mean,
So
yes,
are you talking
okay,
about the bulletproof black man being put at the start of everything, or like at the start of
right
the
now,
timeline, or is it him being put in right now?
right
Like,
now,
let's say this
right now.
person in place of, okay, yeah,
Also, second point, given that war is inevitable and bulletproof black person steps up, I feel implemented strategies or implemented ideas can do away with war. For example, in history, we've studied that the World War III was inevitable, but the Cold War kind of put it off,
right,
or inevitably politicized this entire brutal concept of war,
yeah.
and it was more policy based war rather than.
I see the Cold War. I mean, the Cold War was just there was just no aggression, but right now I think the Cold War is just a bit more frozen to that level. I mean, what I mean to say is, while they aren't as the while tensions weren't as uh uh high as they were in the latter part of the 1900s, I still see that tensions do exist, but I do think that over time they will get heated, because both these nations, whether because it's one ideology that says they're going in direction A, and they're actually doing direction B with Putin in this context. um, and you have multiple different ideologies and multiple different policies coming in the something like the United States. You never know how it would work, because you saw the transition the different lines that someone like Khrushchev took, and then another line that Gorbachev took, and a different line that Stalin took, and you saw a different line.
That
uh,
Mussolini took.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. You saw a different line that Mussolini took. You saw, because when you're talking about how different countries, like how different policies, like let's take the example of how different countries are dealing with Russia in the first, or the Russian country in the first place. Because how Hitler dealt with it. Let's look at how Woodrow Wilson.
Let's look at how the Arabs dealt with
Yeah,
it,
yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, in a more modern day example, the Arabs, right? B- these
or the Middle Eastern countries. Arabs is
Yeah,
not very
because
politically correct.
Middle Eastern countries, because one half is bit, okay, US is getting me this and this, but on the other hand, this other group which is a group of countries in the Middle East, says, oh, Russians have links with these guys who are also closer to me, who can help me at a quicker level. Again, quantity quality also comes in here a bit. Who can provide what societally? Like the international community thinks this of my country, if I'm siding with this or this. It's a giant hodgepodge, if you ask me.
Yes, but you have to look at how every country has dealt with the situation according to their needs, right? You look at, so as of right now, like there's a rivalry between India Pakistan, it is Germany Russia, US Russia, China Russia, but there is only one versus on one end, it's Russia versus everyone else,
Yeah.
correct? Ideally. But then you see the amount of trade treaties, the amount of friendly links that Russia has with different countries. You look at the basic supplier of military arms to India, all
Russia.
right? Not now, maybe, but Russian brands own this scenario. You look at situations that can outlast a country that can outlast everything, Russia. You look at Vladimir Putin, who just keeps reinstating himself every year.
Yeah.
And you look at stuff that he has money in. He has money in football. He has money in allies of his enemies.
Have you watched the documentary Icarus?
No, I have not.
Well, I think you should, because when we're talking about something like Putin having money here or Russia having money in this, you know, uh, the Icarus was essentially talking about steroid use. Can you cheat the Olympic system, or um, can you cheat the doping commissions, and so on and so forth. And Russia, and this particular head of the research at this Russian laboratory, I forget his name. Anyway, he proved to this American guy that, this is possible. He taught him how to dope. He taught him how to cheat the doping system. He explained in the goriest of details how Russia skirted Olympic regulations, doping commissions when
So,
they came for the
China,
Moscow Olympics. Yeah, same thing. China. Um yeah, it's basically talking about how any system is cheatable, and they just use the concept. They this time, the case in point they took was athletics and doping, right? This one guy is saying that, this shouldn't exist, so I'm going to skirt the rules as a rebel. And another person saying, okay, this is incorrect, but it does give me an advantage and I should do it. So you see different people doing the same thing, but for different reasons. And
exactly where we need a bulletproof black woman to mediate.
exactly. Yeah. I see exactly what you mean. And while we're talking about these historic.
When there is difference in opinion, there is option for a correct. What I mean is, when you go to a debate, and if you are judging the debate or taking part in the debate, mostly judging, you hold one line of thought,
Yeah.
whatever two sides tell you, right? And you have to convince the losing side why the winning side was closer to the correct point, or why the losing side did not put the correct points. Correct, right? So I feel the bulletproof black man is going to be a mediator between the right and wrong and shed light on the gray. So my entire concept is that this is going to be a high valued individual who is going to treat, call a spade,
Right.
but also not be influenced by emotion, not, be heartless for that matter. For example, if he can't be a Robin Hood, because he should be a little bit of a Robin Hood, but cannot be entirely. For example, if a man stole to feed his children, you should punish him, but you should not prosecute him.
Right.
So, my entire concept or my thought behind this concept is how our grandparents mediated between us wanting more sweets and our parents not giving us those sweets, where they gave us the sweet, but they said don't have more. So we were happy with the one sweet. Our parents were happy with the fact that okay, my son's not having too many sweets. And our grandparents happy because both sides are happy.
Right.
Right? So my entire concept between this is finding middle ground and using equitable measures to find such set middle ground. And I feel a person of privilege cannot find said middle ground as easily as when compared to a person coming from adversity.
Yeah, because that's why the principle of this bulletproof person, let's take it bulletproof person for now, makes sense. Because whether you're a privileged white person or a downtrodden black person, uh, or discriminated black person, or a societally highly regarded white person, um you will see that, the white person who is educated in a way to believe that, these people are inferior, you can't blame them for thinking this. And here's why: these people haven't been taught the other side of the
The
table.
coin. Correct.
We've been showed the other side of the coin, that, how about this, how about this is not true, and how, why don't you rethink this principle considering this and this. These, when these people haven't been showed that other side of the coin, you
Because
can't.
they have a preconceived bias about the other side of the
Yeah,
coin.
the preconceived.
They
Yeah.
they don't want to see the other side of the coin. They are happy with this side of the coin.
Yeah.
So if you tell if so example, if you tell a rich guy that who's having dinner at a long table being served by a butler to cook his own meal, he'll be like, nah, I don't want to do that. I paid for it. I paid for someone who can do it, who can also support his family and can cook the meal for me, and I can have a tasty meal. Whereas compared to my very messed up omelette that I will make. Correct? But you go to a small nucleated family who's cooking their own meal, who are cooking their own meals, and they will tell you how important it is to have dinner with the food that you cook. Correct? And they will say, I do not want a butler. Even if I can afford it, I will rather have the sense of family. Whereas one will say, I'd rather have the sense of comfort. Correct? So the nucleated family is deriving comfort from a very small and narrow idea that I cooking for me is equal to me happy.
Right.
Whereas the rich dude is saying, I providing for my family, or wherein I provide for my family and we get the best food, family happy. So it is a preconceived bias that I don't want to see the other side. I don't want to see a middle ground. I don't want to see the other side. Like, and this kind of bias exists in every single strata of our society, every single nook and cranny of our society. And not only of financial kind, there's a religious bias, there's a language bias, there's a skin bias, there's a tonality bias, there's how you orate bias, there's how you dress bias, there's a bias in everything that you can possibly imagine. For example, if I walk in for an interview, have you watched the that movie? What's it called? Uh, I it's that dude. He's a damn good actor.
um are you
Uh,
talking about a TV show, the
no,
Simpsons?
Karate Kid, the new Karate Kid, Jaden Smith's father.
Jaden Smith, yeah, Will Smith, yeah.
Will Smith's father. The movie with Will Smith and Jaden Smith. The what?
Yeah, yeah,
Quest
I see what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah,
Quest for Happiness or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
something.
Yeah, I know the movie that you're
I
talking about.
have. I mean, people that we know will kill us because
Yeah.
of this. Right.
We were
So
playing that game of Pictionary the
yes,
other day.
yes, exactly. Oh, I don't have the movie. Nevertheless, so he
Yeah,
walked into an interview where he was wearing shabby clothes, and they already assumed that he knows nothing.
right.
When you go for a debate and a person is not fluent in English, you assume that it's
True.
an easy opponent.
I am one of those people. Yeah.
Yes, you assume that he's an easy opponent. When you're at a meal and somebody doesn't know how to use a fork and spoon, you assume that, or they don't know how to use chopsticks, you assume that they're not cultured. When you're paying for a bill and the guy asks, and your friend, and you say that you forgot to get your wallet, so the guy says, "Oh, I don't have enough money to pay to get the bill," you assume that he's not of your same strata.
Okay.
And there are biases in everything that we do, and honestly, biases rule our society. And it's so sad. Lady drivers are frowned upon. Why? Because their motor actions are not good enough, their reflexes are not fast enough. That's utter nonsense. It's just that they've so accepted that people have so accepted that this bias exists and have toned themselves accordingly. How confident are you when you throw a ball to your brother?
Very.
How confident are you when you throw the same ball to your mother?
Not very.
Why?
Because I don't think she'll be able to catch it.
Why?
Because I haven't seen her. Well, two reasons. A, I haven't seen her catch a ball much, or I haven't seen her be as agile as I've seen my brother.
Correct. Now, switch to a girl of your brother's age.
Yeah.
When she, and going back into her childhood, she was taught that catching a ball is not your cup of tea. You don't need to learn it.
Hmm.
What do you buy for your niece as a birthday gift? What's the first thought that's in your mind?
Barbie doll.
Nephew?
Football.
And for your pet?
Chew toy.
And for your pet who's a bitch? Same
Um.
shoe toy.
Yeah.
Then why the difference?
I like what you did there. I like what you did
I
there.
mean,
Yeah, that makes
you have a
perfect
dog,
sense.
right? You have a
Yeah,
dog, right?
he's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a male dog?
Yeah, he's a man.
Yeah. So you take a ball, you chuck it at him.
Yeah.
He'll catch it, or in all probability, he will smack his face. One of the two,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You do the same to Poku. Uh, she'll probably do the same thing too.
Yeah. True.
Mhm.
Poku
Correct?
is one of our friends' dogs. Yeah.
Yes, Poku is one of our friends' dogs. Correct. So, who happens to be a bitch?
Yeah.
So, the entire concept that we have never wanted or assumed that they will never want to do something and have run our lives according to it is where it is flawed.
True. That is, I completely agree with you there, and I have no like, yeah, it's just preconceived notions. That's the only thing you can point it at, because I'm gonna use this for any further, that exact example that you gave me here. It's something that I'm gonna keep in mind for any further conversation I have with regards to this topic, is because it's one of the best parallels you can draw when it comes to such a scenario. And rolling back to the main topic, about this bulletproof black woman, I have just one last uh, issue with it, or one drawback of it, uh, which and I think you want to take a breath as well. I think you need a break for a second. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break and then we'll get back to this.
All
All right, we've taken a short break. We have had a drink of water. I'm sure Pablo has too. So yeah, there we go. Yeah. So before we wrap up for today, I just had one last question, or thought that Pablo, I want you to weigh in on as well. It's similar to what we were talking about earlier. It's that this we're going to take the example of strictly a bulletproof black woman here. Is that this person would be more educated and more, and would sympathize more with issues with regards to discrimination against um, the discrimination of black people, the discrimination of women, when there's these societal issues, right? And when this person is put to power, this person would, because by virtue of human nature, in a realistic world where this person can, let's say for example, also add in a bit of a creative element, wherein this person can make these drastic changes, this person would be more geared towards making changes with regards to,
to her own.
yeah, because when you're bulletproof, that doesn't mean you're unbiased, right? Of course you'd be biased towards fixing the issues that are uh, that hold
More
uh,
significance to you.
yeah, significance to your own society, the societies you're more involved with. So when, let's say for example, when we were talking about this whole uh, girl Barbie doll and boy soccer ball example, uh, we have other sayings like, boys don't cry, or don't cry like a girl said to a boy. Okay,
Hmm.
there are these uh overused overused terms for these people, and then for a girl there's um that's not ladylike of you,
Sit
or
properly,
yeah, sit
walk
properly,
properly.
or yeah, so on and so forth. We're all aware of what these quotes are. Now what I am thinking is, whether it's a bulletproof black woman, or or a bulletproof male, or a bulletproof female, or so on and so forth, this person would be more geared towards fixing their own situations than fixing that of the other society. So do you really think that it would be effective for this person, effective for the overall development of society, if this one person who would have some level of bias for their own society take the reins? Because you wouldn't see the same level of gravity, uh,
You're
as,
telling me it's going to be a narrow as when compared to a holistic approach.
yeah, it won't be as holistic. Yeah.
So the entire concept of any approach being a holistic approach is to gather a crowd and deal with the crowd, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, in very layman terms,
Yeah.
not that I know anything advanced, but still. So, when you look at a concept that is society based, our society is fragmented into multiple lesser societies, correct?
Yeah.
We say we belong to society. In the Indian society, the Indian high society, the Indian A society, X, Y, Z, and what have you. So, our entire concept for bulletproof black women being biased towards solving her problems first is not a problem because our holistic approach honestly isn't taking us very far.
Hmm.
I mean, we've tried democracy, we've tried representative democracies, tried autocracy, we've tried, in fact, we've tried dictatorship in different countries. Not that we know what DPRK is doing. We've tried a socialistic setup, a mixed setup, a close to
But didn't we
capitalistic
really
setup.
try the um socialist, I mean, forgive me for deviating from the topic a bit,
Yeah, yeah.
let's say communism, right?
Communism is not possible in today's world.
Yeah, I agree
You
with you,
cannot give
but
everyone an
but
equal setup and have them be okay with it,
yeah,
especially right now.
I agree, but then do you really think we saw an adequate representation of communism during the USSR era, which technically, uh, when we're historically talking about it, killed communism as we know it now? As in, it's a terrible hush hush thing. You never talk about being communist, or so on and so forth, because Marx preached one thing, Lenin did another, Stalin did another, and so on and so forth. So,
Do you also don't you think Hitler was a radical communist?
I had this discussion with a friend of mine, and I said that, while Hitler did preach this and this and this, like he kept telling me, no, you can't think of it like that. Hitler was this, Hitler did this. You can't really think of it like that. But if you really look at it, on one level nationalist, next level social, like Nazi, the Nazi
Yes,
is short form for nationalist socialist.
yes.
uh and if you really look at half the things he said, or the kind of way he tried to Nazify, or Nazify Germany, and make it that whole Aryan race, blue eyes, this height, this hair, so on and so forth, try to purify the entire society. You're trying to make it only for these people, and all the resources that are divided among the people are divided among this Aryan race. You can really connect it to some kind of,
Communism,
yeah, yeah,
radical communism. Nevertheless,
exactly,
so coming back to your question,
yeah,
so dealing with a narrower set of problems is dealing with the grassroots, correct?
yeah,
So our roots are so what we can't see is the problem that really affects us. For example, we can treat the problems that are at the bark of the tree. We can bud, graft, and do multiple other things. But what you can't do is treat roots, correct? Like, for example, the human body, you can hardly treat anything that is connected to your brainstem or your spine. It is very difficult when it comes to treating anything that is connected to your brainstem and your spine. And honestly, right now, I feel the problem that we have and that we are acknowledging, like the LGBTQI, right? QIA, right? Your women being second class citizens, being bound to kitchens, and phrases of and women not being okay to travel alone or in the dark or whatsoever be the scenario, and people belonging to the third gender not being accepted, people having a base problem of people speaking in English. For example, when you go to any city in India and you don't speak in English, you are considered to be uneducated. And when you
yeah,
speak in Sanskrit, you're supposed to be a Pandit. I feel my first language is not English and neither is yours.
yeah,
Your first language is Bengali. My first language or my mother tongue should technically be Malayalam, but it is Bengali
okay,
because my mom's mother tongue is Malayalam, but your mother tongue is not what your mother speaks.
yeah,
Truth bomb. Nevertheless, um, the entire concept of us shying away to deal with a big problem and assuming that it is not holistic is the problem, according to me. Right? For example, if you and I were to learn how to play football today, but the shoes that we are wearing are giving us shoe bites, but you are only concentrating on your technique, but you're forgetting that your one of your main requirements is not being fulfilled. Every time you take a shot, you're losing a part of your heel. I feel, and the heel is what you stand on. And I feel today's society stands on women. Today's society stands on equal rights, equity in rights, stands on free gender identification, free identification of will, and given that society stands on so many different moral standpoints and uh, just in ideas, if we shy away from dealing with them, calling them narrow, and assuming that the wholesome product or the wholesome idea is not being fulfilled, multiple narrow roads will always lead. So, any river is only as good as its tributaries, right?
yeah,
If the tributaries are not in function, the society or the villages or the cities that are dependent on the tributaries will not work.
hmm, yeah,
Correct? So, society as a large is made of tributaries, and in the process of trying to fix said tributaries, we can't entirely forget about fix the river. We can't at all forget on the tributaries. Is
right.
my take on this entire concept.
Hmm. I understand what you're getting at, and I see what you're saying. But then, see, I understand why you believe what you're saying, and I understand it. However, I still like have like a bit of a block in my head that's still, gnawing at me, saying that, yeah, sure, this person would be bulletproof to multiple different things, and whether it's issues related to that person's minority or another person's minority, that this person will still hear it out. And at the end of the day, if I am going to hear about a problem with regards to my mother, or how my mother and what she stands for is
You are
famous.
going to deal with that first.
Yeah. and and if it's to my neighbor who I've never had contact with, I would deal with my mother's situation over that of my neighbors, even if the issue of my neighbor is more holds more value to the society. Because at the end of the day, I see it in a world where, it's we all fight for us and what we believe in, and what uh,
Correct. So your what you're saying right now is the question that whether the society has a need of the hour of a bulletproof black lady, and my concept is whether society is at all ready.
yeah.
Right? You are telling me that yes, agreed that it is a requirement, but are we that uh, messed up that we require someone of Superman like or Batman like nature that can control, or a vigilante ideally that can control the society, or are we still okay with how we are? And my
Why?
take on this,
Yeah.
and my
What do you think?
so
I,
and my take on this is we've just gone too far down the drain.
yeah. Same, because I think that while it does have its pros, and while I see this person's efforts can come into fruition in under different situations, the only drawback, or no, the drawback that I see with this person coming to power is that while this person will bring the solutions that are required, while this person will lead, while this person will make the speeches, how many of these people will listen to those speeches, understand what these
You're not
people?
giving them an option, no? Exactly why I'm saying this is close to a dictatorship. You're
Huh,
not giving them an
kintu.
option.
Yeah, but then, yeah, I see what you're saying, but then again, I mean,
For how long?
yeah, for how long will they listen to it? Because you saw, I mean, forgive me for taking a very old example, because that's the only time these examples existed. But the eras of dictatorships and
Give
nepotism.
rise to
Yeah,
anarchy.
let's look at France. Yeah, let's look at how Louis the 16th or 15th. Bad with my, not the best with my history. Anyway, Louis
Hmm.
the 16th, I think. Anyway, look at his fall. Right, his everyone listened to his father, and his father before him, and his father before him. Why? Because everyone saw him as the primary thing. They saw him as God. Forgive me, there's a fly bothering me. Yeah, so there's um yeah, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Louis.
Yeah, Louis. So people stopped listening to Louis. Why? He didn't have the same authority as his fathers. But irrespective, even if he did have the authority, he would have still taken part in the American War of Independence. And when in doing so, the same forward thinking and the irony that France, an oppressed country, is fighting for the independence of another would still be brought in, and people would still protest. Similarly, while I see it as a very good thing that, these people are taking down this person, the mind block that we need to look at from the perspective of these people who are discriminating, that we see as the bad guys, those guys would think that we are the bad guys, and that, we have to rise against them, and we need to write the literature, we need to write the same Voltaire level shit that will help us take down this bulletproof person.
Correct. So when you take, for example, the dictators of France, we also see that the dictators of France gave rise to the French Revolution. I mean, it's because of them that the French Revolution took place.
Yeah.
Equality, liberty, fraternity, the
Yeah.
three basic pillars of the French Revolution, or any revolution for that matter, or anarchy of that matter, going against command,
Yeah.
is something that people have always done. You take, for example, the stalwarts of anarchy, Che Guevara,
Yeah.
Subhash Chandra Bose. You take people of this nature, you will always see that command brings rise a difference in opinion of the minorities who want to come to power. You look at any leader of a revolution, they've been fighting for powers of minority. Here I'm telling you, make the minority, yes, then the majority will be against you. Agreed. All right. But then it at least will solve one problem at hand.
Sure. Yeah, because at the end of the day, something is better than nothing.
Then nothing. Exactly. So my question is the world ready to get something instead of being happy with nothing? But given that something will also come at an opportunity cost,
Hmm. Well, yeah, to some extent, it's then again the situation where is the cost worth it? I mean, of course, there'd be a short-term fallback, or if you make the investment, there'll be some amount of like immediately you're not.
kickback, yes.
Yeah, the only reason why I think this wouldn't work, the whole system of a bulletproof whoever wouldn't work, is that this person would have a long term plan. The reason why the British Empire crumbled eventually, right? The king or the queen at the time had some long term plan, and because they couldn't see it to fruition because of that other person, it wouldn't work. You're not ready to wait for for the fruits of that investment, right? You're not ready to see that eta kureche, let us, I mean, they've done this, let us wait for the benefits
Wait
of
it
it
out.
before. Yeah, we are in a world where when we don't get it quickly, we
We're not
think,
happy with it.
yeah, we don't have the patience to see that if it hasn't come yet, if it hasn't come within the next 1 or 2 days, or
It's not
within a
worth it.
month, it's non-existent. That's the core that I think exists today. We don't have the patience to believe that okay, this might be a possibility, let's wait. That idea among the majority of the society, I mean, I don't have many statistical figures to base it upon, but I mean, look at any of those examples, right? If these dictators really got the time and were really able to show that this is the world I'm trying to create, what would have actually come of it, which is something that I don't think we'll be able to see.
No, no, we might be able to see it. Let's just wait for Kim Jong Un to open DPRK to the public. I feel Kim Jong Un is the bulletproof black mass.
Yeah, sure, he does dress in black the entire time, so
Yes, I feel he's just a bulletproof black mass that can affirm or destroy our 1 hour spent.
true. Well, I mean, at this point, all I can say is best of luck to Kim Jong Un to end
Do
this.
you think the second DPRK opens its market, China will be gone?
China will be.
A second option or collateral damage.
Hmm.
Like when China had opened its market, China was everyone's source of labor, then India opened its market.
So, I mean, no, I think North Korea at first would take a lot of the market share in the sense, like, see what I'm getting at. North Korea would be like, oh, there's a new guy in the market. This is the new stuff he's offering. But then again, when I'm supposed to choose between what I'm used to and what's completely new, I'd try the new thing, but I'd probably just stick to the old thing in the long run.
Do you think if and when North Korea opens their economy, South Korea will make everything cheaper?
Possible. I think that would be the biggest line of conflict between the two nations after that. Because I was watching this YouTube video recently, right? In fact, right before we were recording this. There's, I think it's called Svalbard or something. I don't remember. It's between Canada and Russia. That's no between Iceland and Russia. There's this one small area. Anyway, so it's a small area which is this giant hole. that has been dug into the ground, and it's like a bunker. It's a very cold area, where a naturally cold area, where the seeds from all around the world, over 70,000, above 70,000 different species of seeds, including that from North Korea to Syria to Mexico, Brazil, what have you, India, and all of that jazz. And it's essentially to preserve biodiversity, like
In
every
that
nation.
bunker,
Yeah. So yeah. So what happened was
are
in
you saying preserve or are you saying possibly genetically mutate?
yeah, that is why they are sent in masses to this area, right? So there was this giant mass sent by this like by a city in Syria, sent to this same place, right? They stored it, and then that place was also the home to a giant bombing which ruined almost all of the culture, all of the agriculture there, and all of the seeds and everything that was there were all gone. And they took the same seeds that they sent to this place back and planted it all over, and this place is eventually coming back to the same normal that it was before that airstrike that ruined everything. So I mean,
Until the next airstrike.
yeah, so I mean, something like that could like, if that got more attention, I mean, this would bring us into a whole new loop, which we can talk about later, about media coverage over that area. Because I mean,
I feel teaser into part two,
yeah,
media.
sure. Because a quick uh, theme to set it across: Greta Thunberg, Boy and Slat. Have you heard of Boy and Slat?
No, but I will.
Okay, so you can look through Boy and Slat. I'll give you a quick read over it. Greta Thunberg, a girl who faced a lot of illnesses, and did something very admirable by going to the United Nations, giving out some statistics, and making a well-orated speech to the United Nations, talking about different issues about climate change and so on and so forth. While she was like 14 to 16, something along those lines. While Boy and Slat, before he hit 18, created a multi-million dollar company called Ocean Cleanup, which which has deployed like multiple different ships and different, responsible for the cleanup of multiple seas, and has cleaned up something tons of, I don't have the figures with me, I wrote it in an article for the that's so that was itself. um it talked about he essentially highlighted the Ocean Cleanup essentially highlighted, this is the problem and we're trying to fix it. And when I googled and when we're talking about who had the actual impact, who was the sayer and who was the doer, Boyan was both a sayer and a doer. But people juiced the fact that this was, again, a little girl with a soft voice, who made an infuriated speech into the United Nations. You would pick that over someone who's working on the sidelines.
Actually doing it, yes.
Yeah. So
For
similar.
example, um, picking Malala Yousafzai over the hundreds of NGOs.
Yeah, exactly that. That is the best example of it. Because it all depends on how you bring out propaganda. No, what's the most clickbaity headline you can get, right?
I mean, it's sad that Malala Yousafzai can be used as clickbait after what all she's gone through and what all she's
Yeah,
done. But it's also sad that people that are actually doing don't come to the forefront
yeah. Because the whole preconceived notion that we're seeing is that gaming.
of a bias towards spice.
Yeah, exactly. Another such example is gaming, right? All these people who play these video games, like half these people, like multiple different people, are raising like a certain millions of dollars that they are sending to a charity. This doesn't get covered because gaming is a very bleh. It's for kids. It
I
doesn't.
agree.
Yeah,
So
but on the
let me
same
give you an
level,
example
huh?
about an individual. There's this donator on the so there's a game called Counter Strike Global Offensive, which is a very big thing in the esports industry, and there is a gamer called Pasha Biceps,
Hmm.
who's a Polish gamer. He quit his esports industry and to support his family. And because he chose gaming, his education forefront was not that great. So this guy randomly came and donated 10,000 USD to him randomly, right? And so now Pasha Biceps in Poland has started an NGO by the donator's name, and wherein he collects clothes for children in need, which half the world do not know of.
I am a part of that half.
The entire concept of games killing teenagers' intellect is brought on, but the idea of esports not being formative to an individual's upbringing is not. So I feel perhaps in the next day, in the next segment of this, we can talk about the adverse effects of media, a media bias,
Hmm.
and esports.
Sure. Let's get into that then. Well, this was it for this episode of Pabs and Pops. It was the first one, and I'm looking forward to multiple more. Thank you, Pablo, for joining in. This was it, and we'll see you in the next one. That's what that was.